So for people listening, we just went on a trip to London for our friend Brenda and Raj's wedding. We
Woohoo!
had
Congratulations.
yeah,
Congratulations, you guys.
a lot
Or
of
should
fun.
we say congratulations so Raj understands?
That was great.
Yeah, this was my first time in London. I was so excited to be there with the two of you, but I can confirm that we did not do a single touristy thing. Like I did not see anything in
That's
London.
not true.
You
We
saw
It is
Albert Hall?
100%
we
true.
walked all of London.
We walked for 3.5 hours because our friend is crazy and made us do it.
It wasn't three
And
and a
we
half hours.
didn't
It was
see
the whole
anything.
day.
We didn't see anything the whole time that we were
Okay.
walking. We were just walking on random streets.
We saw the
I
London
almost got
Bridge.
ran over like 14 times.
I think that is not unique to London. We saw the London Bridge. We saw the other bridge, the Tower
Tower
Bridge.
Bridge,
We
Okay,
saw
but did we
Borough
go to the
Market.
palace?
That
we
was
saw
We
closed.
Cathedral.
didn't go to Borough Market because it was closed. And we just had 14 people that were all super codependent on each other, and nobody would like make a decision. And we just ended up going in. We literally just like would go from one place to another, and it would take us forever to get to that other place that we would just get exhausted and then come back to our Airbnb.
No,
And
go ahead.
I would say, like, you know how, like, they say walking is the best route? Like, you see so much of the city. Like, no, we walked through, like, random alleyways, random streets. Like, we did not, I think we saw Oxford Street. I think we walked through the entirety of Oxford Street, and that is it. Like, we did not see one nice thing. And
Yeah.
then, the
You
next
guys, we
day we
did
went
see
to,
nice things. We
Oh,
saw
all I
the
remember seeing,
church.
what?
yeah,
Like
we
we
saw
saw
the
the
outside of the
church.
church.
Yeah, because
Okay,
no
yeah,
one
we
wanted to.
saw the outside of some famous church. All I
No
remember is
one.
Tika doing a backflip. Like
And
there was
falling
literally
right.
nothing that happened. And then
No
we
one
went,
wanted to pay to go into the church. I wanted to go. No one wanted to pay. I think one or two other people piped up, and then everyone was like, "No."
yeah. But this is the thing with the codependent group because even
Yeah.
if there was one or two people that wanted to go, if the rest didn't, then we were just gonna keep sticking with
It
each
was
other and
literally
not.
majority rules.
It was majority rules.
Yeah. So
But
I would say, if you asked me what I thought of London, I could not tell you anything because we
you know
did.
what? It was more of like a food tour. So we would
Mhm.
walk for like a couple hours, eat, then walk to digest that food,
Did we really
and
eat that
eat.
much? Because I was starving most of the
Well,
time.
you left to take your
Yeah. We ate when you
meeting.
left, honestly.
Okay, nice. Thanks, guys. I was actually just reflecting on how we tried to record. Was it yesterday? No, the day before. We tried to record the day before, and we were just not in sync for recording, but we had such a beautiful, just heart to heart.
Hmm.
And yeah, I'm just so grateful that we're doing this with the three of us because some days we get some really great content, and then other days we're like, you know what? We just need the time with each other. And I think that day particularly, we just really needed to be in each other's presence, like truly being there. Um, so I'm actually grateful that no episode came out of that day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too. I think it was really needed for me because I feel like you guys are literally like my safety net. And so no matter what happens, obviously you're always a safety net, right? But like when you feel out of sorts with when I feel out of sorts with myself, like I start feeling out of sorts with that safety net,
Yeah.
and feel like it really helped me kind of just bring that back together within myself and like learn how to lean on that more because I feel like I haven't been leaning on you guys in a sincere way, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like I've been running from how I'm leaning on myself and then leaning on you through that rather than it being more intentional. And so I feel like it allowed me to kind of just remember like the intent behind our friendship, which I'm really, really grateful for. Cause then it like allows you to like build on that and flourish. And I'm able to also show up for you guys how you need me to be there too. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
love
I love
that. And
you.
I'm so grateful that you communicated how you were feeling too. I think that's really important in friendship. And it's the only way that we can get stronger is when we communicate and we have that safe space of knowing that we're going to be heard and validated for what we're sharing.
Mhm.
But yeah, we have to communicate how we're making each other feel and what's going on and how's the relationship going. So thank
Yeah.
you for
Yeah.
that. Well, we started with the lovey-dovey, as always.
Which
But
kind of brings us into the topic because Aditi was like, I feel like, so I was
yeah, that's true. Well, thank you all for joining us for another episode of Voice Notes to My Best Friend. We have done 5 episodes so far, which is actually crazy. Like, we're in this, like, we're actually doing this. We're podcasters.
We've done 5 episodes and I think cried in all 5 of them.
Yeah, basically.
Wait, we should
Um,
introduce ourselves.
what?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
We
yeah,
should
you're
introduce
right.
ourselves.
Oh, yes, we should introduce ourselves. You know, even though we're 5 episodes in, people might still not know who we are. So I'm Harini.
I'm
I'm
a
Tika.
D. Oh, I knew. Let me. I was like, is she gonna say something? And I was like, no, I think I can go. I can do you.
I thought you were gonna go. I'm Tika.
And I'm Aditi.
And welcome to another episode of Voice Notes to My Best Friend. So today we're going to be talking about logical thinking versus emotional thinking. We thought this would be an interesting topic because we've all been reflecting on how we deal with issues when they come our way and what our brain processes during that time and how we react to those situations. We've noticed that some of us think from a very emotive way and some of us think from a very logical perspective. And we don't necessarily, I mean, yeah, I'll stop it there and then we'll start the conversation. But yeah, I'm super excited to hear your guys' thoughts and realizations on this and yeah, just have a conversation on it.
Yeah, I think I also want to emphasize that, these are just like our thought processes and the way we are trying to learn ourselves better, to be honest. So I feel like we're kind of like learning as we speak. And in no way is it like a suggestion of how others should think or feel or any type of dig at how anybody else thinks or feels anything. But yeah, as Harini mentioned, like we want to talk about the different types of minds that are within us. And there's this concept that I actually learned through therapy that you have an emotional mind, a rational mind, and the balance of two is called the wise mind. So, an emotional mind is when a person is highly reactive to their emotions and their decisions and behavior are driven by their feelings. The rational mind or logical mind is when a person is able to think critically and objectively, and their decisions and behavior are based on factual information and practical considerations. And the balance of two, which is the wise mind, is when a person is able to combine their emotions and feelings with logic and reasoning to make decisions that are authentic to personal values and beliefs. And so I learned about the wise mind concept in therapy for the first time because I think I'm somebody that I have an emotional mind. So my first instinct is to react to the emotion that I feel or an emotion that's triggered in my body, even if that emotion is not something that I can trust. And so, um, something that I have to bring into my thinking is like rational thinking, logical thinking, like take a pause and not just immediately react to my emotions. Um, and yeah, I think it's actually been a really interesting process because I've taken a step back to start observing what happens in my mind and my body when I get triggered by something or when I have an emotional reaction. But I think the biggest thing for me is that it's difficult because like your emotion for me completely takes over. Like it's really hard to think clearly because the emotion feels so big and it feels like it's like literally never going to end. And it also brings up other like past feelings of like when that emotion was triggered. So now you're not just dealing with what's in front of you, you're dealing with like the last time and the time before that and the year before that and the year before that. So yeah.
No, I really like that point because I'm also very similar to you. I am a very emotional thinking person. I'm very reactive in a situation, and it's hard for me to sometimes like bring in that rational thinking when I'm feeling very like when I'm in that emotional state of mind. But I really loved the definition that you shared about the wise mind and about how the wise mind acts in a way that's truly authentic to themselves. And I think that's really interesting because when I think of myself and how like honestly like explosive I can get when I'm in that emotional framework, that's not how I authentically am. But, like, if I'm sitting here saying, "Oh, I'm a super logical, practical person," that's not authentic to me either. Like, I think that authenticity comes from, like, being able to truly understand, like, what like, in that situation, what authentically makes sense to you, right? And, like, how can you, like, show up authentically in that situation? I feel like if I just take a step back and think that way, instead of just immediately reacting, it would allow me to like unlock the more logical thinking that I need to bring into that into that situation and like incorporate that wise mind thought process. So that's kind of like an exercise I want to try. I mean, it's so hard because you're right. When you're in that emotional thinking stage, your emotions literally consume you. Like you can't even think like what I'm saying right now, but I want to try it. Like when I'm feeling like that anger or sadness or frustration or whatever in that situation, and it's just like overcoming and like over encompassing everything, can I take a step back and be like, okay, like if I were acting authentically to myself, like how would Harini act in this situation? So that's something that I kind of want to try. And that was really interesting that that was part of the definition. I just
Yeah.
spit, sorry.
It's really interesting because you're saying like when you're in a situation you don't even know how to think rationally, and I'm a very rational, logical person, and so I think my way through everything. And I think sometimes it might seem like I think the definition was like objective, rational thinking, and so I feel like the impression that gives off is like it's like you're just kind of like thinking through your problems, but sometimes like you think so much that you start like overthinking, and then
Mhm.
you're not looking at the facts anymore. You're creating patterns in your head because you're just thinking so much.
Mhm.
And so like you're creating false realities in your head. And so it's really interesting. So in therapy, I actually am doing this thing. It's called EMDR. So EMDR is like where you like trigger your um, past thoughts and then you work through them. You're basically like, it's like memories in your life have not been filed properly. So what EMDR does, it kind of just like puts it back into place and files it properly. And so a lot of EMDR is feeling your emotions. And even today, like I was talking through a situation and it literally like my body was like the way I was even talking about the situation, which was like it was like something that had impacted my life, and like the way I was even like speaking about the situation is like laughing at it because I couldn't associate an emotion with it.
Mhm.
And so I was just like, I was talking to my therapist and I was like, yeah, I don't know why I'm like laughing at it, what I'm telling you. She's like, because that's what you do. Like, your answer is showing up. The answer is like how you protect yourself from feeling your, like, how you protect yourself from going deeper. And the people with a logical mind, they have this answer, which is like, let me just start thinking. This way I don't have to feel like I don't have to deal with what's inside. And
Wow.
so you just like try to think through, but a lot of the times like that's not how you deal with what's going on in your life. You cannot think through everything. It has to be like it has to be feeling it first and then you can think about it too.
That's so interesting because I mean, first of all, everything you just shared was just mind-boggling, but especially because I don't think that way. So it's really interesting to hear your take on it. But what I thought was also really interesting is I think for emotional people, it also, like what you're saying, like when you're logically thinking through things, you're not getting to the deep root of it. I think it's the same when you're only thinking emotionally too. Like that's also just surface level. Like you're not getting deeply rooted to the issue. Cause sometimes when am in that emotional state and I finally like somebody like points out the voice of reason to me, I take a second and I'm like, wait a minute, like that's true. Like, why am I not facing the reality of the situation? Like, a lot of the times when you're like an emotional thinker, you have like a very anxious brain and you're basically like thinking through of a future that actually is not the reality of what the future is, or you think of your present being a certain way that's actually not the way it is because you're applying so much emotion. And then somebody will just be like, okay, well, look at the facts, look at how the situation is in X, Y, and Z, or look at how it's always worked out. And then when you're able to calm yourself, you're like, wait a minute, like that's true. Like I wasn't getting to that deeper root of like, how to solve the problem. I was just coming from that surface level of this is how I'm going to express my emotions. And it's so interesting because in both situations, like logical mind and emotional mind, both of them are not like solving the root issue. Like you're just at that surface level, just creating a false reality that's not real. Um, Sorry, I'm just rambling, but your explanation made me realize like, wait a minute, I do the same thing, but in an emotional way.
It's also, I think it's also unique for the three of us too, because we're also anxious minded. And so
Just to
I
spice it up a little, you know.
just to spice it up. So I wonder how that, like, I think that's why we're also similar in that way, because I think worry is the commonality of anxious people, right? It's like, okay, like I'm emotional about, you're emotional about it, and so you start like freaking out because you're worried about what's gonna happen. I'm anxious, but I'm also logical minded. So I start like thinking about like what can go wrong, what can go wrong, what can go wrong.
Mhm.
But I wonder, like, someone who's like not anxious, maybe like what if someone's like, I don't know, like whatever other like mental health issues other people have, like I wonder how that is impacted by the way they think.
So interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think Harini, I never thought of it the way you were saying that like you're never actually getting to the root of the issue at hand. Because I always thought that like when I was having an emotional reaction, I knew exactly what I was having an emotional reaction to.
Mhm.
Uh, but, like, the more that I think about it, the more I'm like, it's never usually just what's in front of me. It's usually like I'm scared of something repeating itself, or I'm scared of like something that's happened before. Like it's that's what's coming into my head, you know? And so it's like, it's really hard because you're saying look at the facts, right? So that's a huge thing that like I've also learned in therapy is like you're supposed to look at the evidence in front of you. Um, but it's hard when like you've been in situations where the evidence has pointed you in a direction where you're just like it's not quote unquote like what you want, or
Yeah.
it's just, whatever. And so I wonder how, like, I guess that's where the logical mind comes in for emotional thinkers of like the evidence of right now, not the evidence of the past, like the evidence of the situation at hand, like not evidence from like that's going to make it go a negative way, you know? So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I think also when you were saying that like you're not acting to your most authentic self. I feel like when you're in either mind, when you're in a emotional mind or logical mind, like I feel like authenticity kind of just goes out the window because it's like you're not in your balanced state, you know? So you're not like able to present yourself in that authentic way. Um, and I guess like for emotional mind, what makes you more authentic is being more logical, and a logical mind, what makes you more authentic is bringing emotion into it. But
And I think like for a logical person, you look at the facts, but then when you start looking at the facts a little too much, you start noticing patterns, and then creating you start creating stuff, and then you start getting worried because you're like almost reading too into the details, and you're getting all in your head about it. And I think that's when it's important to take a step back and just to feel, because that's what my therapist says. She's always like, an emotion, I guess this is tailored to logical minded people, but she said an emotion lasts 90 seconds. Like, just feel it. And
Mm.
I think that's what I have to do is like, when I start going crazy and just rapid thinking, I just have to like take a second and just feel it and literally tell my mind, stop it. And so my mind stops its thoughts and I just have to feel it. But it's also interesting because I feel like something that you were talking about is like I feel like sometimes the grass seems greener on the other side. Like for emotional minded people, it's like, oh, I wish I was logic minded. And then for logical minded people, I wish I was emotional minded. And I actually think when I was younger, I was very emotional. I had like a very emotional response to everything. But my best friend, she's like very, very, very logical. My best friend growing up, she's very logical. Like she like literally almost has no emotions. And so I always wanted to be like that because I thought like I saw she was always so calm. She was always able to like think through things. And then here I was having this like explosive like reaction every single time. And I actually think I've like made myself more logical over the years. Like I feel like once I got into college, like I've made myself into this like rational thinking person, and it's like, and then I've made myself into the extreme of that person. So it's not always greener on the other side.
But it's really crazy because it's like you kind of at some point must have experienced the balance, right? Like you crossed over from like emotional mind to logical mind, and here in the middle is your wise mind. So it's like,
I don't think so, because I think
yeah,
like in reality it seems like a spectrum, right?
yeah.
But I think what I don't think it was like oh like I went from like rational to logical. I mean rational to emotional to rational, and like I crossed over the spectrum. I think it was like just like sporadic extremes of both. And then I ended up becoming a rational person. But yeah, it's actually interesting. I don't think there was like a balance ever.
That is interesting.
Interesting. I love that point about the grass being greener on the other side because my husband is a very logical, rational thinker, and I'm a very emotional thinker. And I feel that way, like I feel like he's so calm and put together and can like really think through situations. But I also sometimes see like the way that I can empathize in a situation is pretty cool as like an emotional thinker. And I think he has to take a step further to like bring that empathy into it. And even when, we get into disagreements, like I can obviously come at it from a very emotional way, and he comes from it in a very logical, practical way. But both, when you're in a conflict, can feel like the other person is not understanding me. So you have to like meet them where they are, which is really interesting. And that's kind of the question I wanted to ask you guys. Like when you're dealing with conflict with another person, especially a loved one, and they think in a different way than you, how do you kind of meet them to how they think? Because for me, it's like I have to learn to bring in reason to like how I'm talking to him, and he has to bring in empathy in how he's explaining things to me, or like how he's feeling in a situation, so I'm able to understand him better. Like we both kind of have to like meet each other in the middle somewhere, and we're still figuring that out. But yeah, like I'm curious to understand like how you guys navigate that with your loved ones, or just friends or people in general.
It's I started thinking about my dynamic with my parents when you were saying that. Like my dad is a very rational person, so whenever we have a like an issue, it's just like solved like this because we just know we're like sorry, sorry, great, great. But my mom, she's a Cancer, and she like is so
My mom's a
emotional.
Cancer too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so interesting.
Well, my mom's birthday is actually your wedding anniversary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Not too far.
Um, and so shout out Linny and shout out Harini and Ravi, June 23rd. Um, and so she's very emotional. And when I get into fights with her, like I can tell she just wants to be like acknowledged. She just wants to be loved and she just wants to be like told that everything is going to be okay. But like my logical mind just won't let me do that sometimes. Like I'll just have to like rapid fire everything in the situation, like how it could be corrected, and I need her and my anxious mind, I need like her confirmation. I'm like, okay, you have to tell me you're gonna do this. And so what I've realized is like when I'm in a conflict, I think like when two people think a different way, like you almost like the different thinkings, like you almost try to like change each other. You're like, I wish
Yeah.
you were more like me, or I wish you were more like me. And so that is what then causes the fight.
Yeah.
So I just like try to take a step back and I go into my room and I just like I don't talk to her for a little bit. And then when I'm ready, once that like anger has come down, um I go to her from a more calm place to try and understand her perspective.
It's so interesting that you mentioned anger because I feel like sometimes with logical people, you don't think that they're angry in the argument. And I feel like that
Mhm.
makes an emotional person even angrier. 'Cause like, why are you not feeling the way I'm feeling right now? But like, they are feeling it. They're just expressing it in a different way than you, which is so interesting. Like, you are angry in that situation, and that's why
Yeah.
you're spewing out all of these facts. So wow, I don't know. This is just such a cool conversation because like we all three think so differently.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I was thinking that.
What
Yeah, I
about you,
think
Aditi?
I'm similar to Tika where but this is like learned behavior for me because I think I've had to I think the communication style in my house has changed a lot since I started going to therapy because um like I used to be very explosive because I thought that was like the only way to react. It's like the only way I
Yeah.
knew how to react. And I didn't understand like how to change that. But what Tika mentioned about like taking a step back, I thought it was really interesting when you were saying that like when you're in a conflict with a logical minded person, in your emotional mind, you're trying to bring reason in so you can understand the other person. And in their logical mind, they need to feel some emotion to understand you. And I think it's really interesting, like trying to work it out in the moment, because I don't think I've actually done that. Like, I don't think that I've been able to work out a conflict in the moment in
Mm,
that manner. And maybe it's due to like the nature of your relationship, right? Like you're married, so it's like a different relationship. But I think for me, what really helps is like I need to take a step back because um, I'm not going to be able to. I have to get myself to a wise mind or a rational mind to have a conversation with whoever I'm having a conflict with because as an emotional minded person, if that person doesn't understand, I like I can't my like it makes me even more frustrated, you know?
yeah,
So yeah, I think just taking a step back and honestly, I think it helps everybody taking a step back because
for sure.
like you can approach it in a much more calmer way. Like the other person has also just like, decided to like come back to the table with a different perspective or a calmer perspective. And I think even then, if the conversation doesn't go well, again, I take another step back and then I repeat that process until we find a solution or we just agree to disagree.
I love that. And I think the advice of taking a step back is so important because I think that, like even with us three and so many of our friends and family, we're all very expressive people and even the way that we communicate like we know a lot of words and we know how to like cut someone with our words truly, whether you're a logical thinker or an emotional thinker. And there have been so many times when I've been in arguments with like really close family and friends where I mean mainly more family, but like I will say things from an emotional explosive space and then afterwards I'll be like why did I say that? Like that was such a messed up thing to say. And now on top of like apologizing for the argument and trying to get to a good space, I'm now like regretting the words that I chose in that moment too. So I feel like taking a step back is so important in that way. So you don't, and like, of course, like it's your family. They understand, like we've all said, we've all done things, all that, but like that doesn't excuse the behavior, right? And if we want to, like, I'm saying this more as like a testament to myself, like, if I want to authentically be Harini, like I should not be saying some of the things that I say when I'm in that explosive emotional state. So I think taking a step back is really important. Um,
And
yeah.
you'd be like really surprised to see like it takes time, but like I'm so pleasantly surprised and very appreciative that my family also now does the same thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like their communication style has changed just because my communication style has changed. Just like it just takes one person. So
Yes.
it's like really nice when you know how you're saying like you have to meet that person where they are. Like of course in the beginning it was like almost as if like I was mocking them because it's like who do you think you are? Like you've always reacted a certain way your whole life and now all of a sudden it's like like you're gonna take a step back, like, what does that mean, you know? But I think after you put it into practice, like, over and over and over again, like, everybody starts seeing the benefit of, like, "Okay, like, I just need to, like, cool down," and that doesn't mean that the disagreements go away, that doesn't mean anger goes away, that doesn't mean the emotional part of it goes away, it just means, like I guess it's more like communication, right? Like, that has to do more with, like, changing your communication style, but yeah.
Also, it reminds what you were saying reminds me of like this concept of push and pull. And I may be extrapolating here, so I might be wrong, but I like put the concept of push and pull. Someone who's like in our spiritual community was telling me about it. She said like people tend to have two reactions when they're dealing with some conflict. They either push, which it means that they react immediately, or they pull away, which is like the taking space. They take a second, right?
Mhm.
And I think again, I think me dealing with my conflicts with, for example, my mom, I that is a learned behavior, but I think like just, hearing you, Harini, and just knowing how I am, I feel like logical minded people, like they think about it and they're like, I need to get this check done. Like you need to tell me you're gonna like commit to this. You need to tell me like you're like you almost want that other person to be like, okay, like you want that like guarantee so you can like check it in your head that it's done. So I feel like we tend to push the emotional minded people more to the point where you guys start getting like you're like wait just like let me feel it, let me think through it, like, and we like almost force you to think, and that's what happens. That's what you're talking about, Aditi, is like you can't do that in the moment sometimes. So yeah, it's just like a little observation that I had.
That's so interesting because I feel like as an emotional person, I'm the pusher. Like I'm
Oh.
like trying to get a reaction out of you. Like I want to like scream and like get it all out and just like lay it all. And I have to learn to pull back and just, take a step back and think things through and then come back when I'm in a cooler state of mind. But that's really interesting because I think you can have push and pull within the two within a logical mind and an emotional mind. So I think I'm like an an emotional pusher, but maybe Aditi's more of an emotional puller, like she needs to take a step back. So, yeah, I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the balance of it is when to know when to push, when to
Yeah.
pull, right?
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I wonder if the push and pull is also like anxious mind and avoidant mind. Do you think it's along those same lines, or do you think it's different? Because I feel like the way you were explaining it, it sounds different. But when you initially started talking about it, I was thinking about like anxious mind and avoidant mind because, like, I think the three of us are anxious minded. So it's like that's just one perspective of an emotional mind and a logical mind from an anxious mind. I think when it comes to avoidant mind, I have no idea what is going on in an avoidant minded person's head. Like I have literally no idea because like I think the anxiety part of it, like you know how you were like as a logical person, I just want to get it done now, right? Even as an emotional person, like I want to
Yeah.
know right now that
Yeah.
everything is okay and I
Hmm.
need it to be fixed right
Right
now
now.
because it's
Yeah.
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
there is like no other, because like the reality you create in your head of it not getting fixed right now is so bad, or like these thoughts or these feelings, it's just so out of proportion that it's like,
Yeah.
but I cannot understand what it means to like not want that immediately, you know?
Yeah.
Um, which I'm trying to learn, but I don't know.
Well, shout out to the people listening to our podcast that are avoidant minded. We would love to hear your perspective because we don't know. How do
We
you
don't
guys
get
think?
it.
No, I think you're right. That's kind of what it sounded like, right? Like anxious minded versus like avoidant minded. But I do know some people that have anxious minds that are of that pull most
Mm.
of the time.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah, you know how like Harini was saying, like I'm an anxious puller. Like I feel like that's me trying to have a wise mind, right?
mm,
Because like my instinct and my initial reaction is like to push, just
push.
make sure that it's taken, like that it's okay. Like it's not to push to get a reaction out of somebody. It's not to push to like, it's to push to come to a conclusion or like a solution. But I think like also something else you were mentioning earlier is like that taking a step back, like I think just observing yourself, like you don't, no matter what situation you're in, something that's really helped me is like, let me look at myself, like let me just take a step back and observe why I'm having an emotional reaction. And it's going to sound very hippie-esque, but I literally like close my eyes and like I imagine seeing myself from like
Mm,
outside my body, like as if I'm looking down on myself. And then I look at myself sitting there and I think of that person having an emotional reaction. But the
mm,
person that's looking at that person as the observer, you know?
um,
And I kind of let that person have that emotional reaction. And as the observer, I'm like, I'm just going to wait until this emotional reaction subsides so that I can try to bring some logic into it. So I
um,
feel like I've been trying to do that because it's like, it's just too much, to be honest. I'm getting tired of having emotional reactions. I'm like literally exhausted. Like I just like, like it's just like tiring because it's like you're going around like creating realities that don't exist, but you're feeling those realities. Like I
mm,
think that's what also a lot of people don't understand, or when someone says, "Oh, like I have anxiety," or like I have an emotional mind, or like blah blah blah, you're always like, "Okay, yeah, whatever." But it's like, no, you don't get that. Like I'm feeling the feeling of loss. I'm feeling the feeling of failure. I'm feeling the feeling of conflict. And then your body is storing that. Like that
yeah.
doesn't go away, dude. And like then you have to now work even harder to come to a baseline of feeling okay again, where it's just like, this is just enough.
It's so true. I'll feel like even after like an argument has subsided, I'll feel like I went through war to
Yeah.
like went to come to that resolution. Like I felt so many emotions through it all. And then the other person who may not be an emotional person is kind of like kind of still like they're doing okay. Like I'm sure they've had their emotions through it too, but maybe they weren't feeling it to the extremes that I was feeling it. And I just feel so exhausted by at the end of it all. Like I literally feel like I've felt every every single spectrum of what could be out there in those emotions during that time. So I completely relate with that.
I honestly, like, I've just started trying to do that. And one of the first times I did that was when we were at the manor together during the
Uh,
kirtan.
Oh
And I was
wow.
sitting there, yeah, and I like closed my eyes and I was like, enough. you know? And it
yeah.
was really crazy because I think after I tried to do that observation, like my entire body relaxed.
Mm,
Like it just allows yourself to decompress and it's like it allows you to bounce back a little bit quicker. But I think it is still really difficult. Like it's not something that comes to me so naturally all the time. Like half the time, if I'm having anxiety, I think the frustrating part for me is that like I have to get back to my baseline to be able to think logically. Like I
yeah.
cannot bring reason into it until that anxiety has subsided. And so it's like to get to the wise mind, you have to do a little bit of work. I'm sure whether you're rational minded or emotional minded, like
Yeah.
you have to do work to get to your emotional wise mind so that your rational wise mind can come in, you know?
Mhm.
And also Tika, I was wondering, like, we were explaining how like we feel exhausted after our emotions, like in an argument or something, but like, how do you feel like as a rational minded person after an argument or something? Do you feel like you're you also have to work twice as hard to come back to baseline, or do you feel like your baseline doesn't shift?
I feel like when I get into an argument, like a heated argument, for example, or just, yeah, when I get into an argument and my mind is running, you're talking about getting to like that baseline, logical, wise mind to then even be able to understand the emotional side of it. For me, that's how it would be, right? And so how I do that is like how I take space is like I literally just have to turn my mind off. And I do that by like reading or by watching YouTube videos, like whatever I can do in that moment so I don't have to think, because like I think myself into a headache. Like I will literally get a headache from it.
Wow.
And I like there have been times where like I'm like I thought this was supposed to be like, like you get a headache from like lack of water, but there have been times where like I've literally had to take like Advil because
Wow.
I like thought myself into a headache because you're just like your mind is running, your face is red, and you're just like you cannot stop it. And
Wow.
so it honestly like causes yourself pain too. So I feel like our exhaustion is like in our head.
Mm. I didn't think of
That is
that.
so interesting.
It is
Yeah.
interesting.
Wow. I'm just taking a pause because this is like such a cool topic. Like I kind of want to do this topic again with maybe like a guest on as well
An
that
avoidant minded
and
guest.
avoid it.
Oh, yes.
It could be really cool to like get their perspective because I think this is the crux, right? Like if we can learn how to communicate with each other, if we can learn how to react to situations, we can't control what happens to us, but if we can control our reactions to what's happening to us, and if we can learn to like communicate with other styles of avoidance or anxious or rational or emotional. There's so many, I'm sure there's so push, pull, there's so many flavors of it. We can learn how to do that with other people. Like, you know, we've honestly, like, I feel like we've unlocked a superpower because I feel like that's no, like truly, like, I
And
feel like
all the people that are not listening to this podcast will not unlock that superpower.
No. Sucks for them.
no, but it's like so true because I think so much conflict and pain and confusion in relationships and confusion with yourself could be so easily avoided if we just learn these techniques and put them to practice like the way you guys are. So yeah, I don't know. This is a really cool topic. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, like, I guess, how do you go about having more of a wise mind? For me, like, I have to balance it out, right? I feel like I got the rational lockdown. Now I have to have an emotional mind. So it's crazy, but I literally have to like when I don't understand what's happening, I like have to look at this thing. It's called like an emotion wheel. And wait, I could probably like we can even share a picture of it, but an emotion wheel like literally breaks down your emotions. This is how it looks. Wait, hold on. This is how it looks. It like
Oh,
literally like is
wow.
like a little wheel, and in the middle is like angry, disgust, sad, surprise, fear, trust, happy. Then like you can like break it down from that, and then you can break it down from that, and then I understand like okay, well the main gist of it is feeling like this, and then I break it down, and I literally have to like practice that. Like okay, right now I'm feeling just angry, or right now I'm feeling disgusted. Like I literally have to like practice those like basics of like okay, this is how I'm feeling, and that's how I understand what I'm feeling in that moment and try to feel it.
So is it like more like naming the feeling, or is it actually practicing feeling?
It's both. It's first recognize because like a lot of the times like which I don't know if that's the case with other logical people, but I think for me, I don't even know what I'm feeling.
Mm,
Like I'm feeling something, for example, in therapy, she'll be like, "What are you feeling?" I'm like, "Hold up, let me get the emotion wheel out." So I can like actually label that feeling
Mm.
because it's just kind of like cloudy, right? I'm like, what is this feeling? It's just like some weirdness within me, right? I understand joy, but that's like so easy. And so and so I'll name it, and then because I've named it, I'll be able to I'll be able to just like then feel it. A lot of the times like you have like some type of sensation in your body when you're feeling something. So then you like press into that and that's how you feel it.
What do you
Okay.
mean sensation in your body?
Like you feel like a certain like okay, like for example, if I'm feeling anxious, right? My heart like it feels weird. So I'll press into that and
Got
that's how
it.
I feel it. I'll like try to like sit with it with like just pressing my heart. And then that's me feeling it. But first I have to identify like am I feeling anxious? Am I feeling sad? Am I feeling like what am I feeling? And
Mhm.
then I feel it.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I think a
Yeah.
nice reminder, also what you mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, was that every emotion lasts 90 seconds.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's like half, I feel like for the logical minded people, it's like allowing yourself to react in those 90 seconds. And for the emotional people, it's like don't react. Just let that emotion be there for 90 seconds.
Yeah.
Don't react and see where it goes. Cause like I feel like half the time, like if I'm feeling sad or something, it's like, like you start playing some music or you watch these videos or something, and it's like you actually make that emotion last so much longer. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, sorry. Did you have more to say, Tika? I feel like you had more. No?
No, that's really it.
Okay. Um,
Wait, what was your question again?
well, how do
How are
you
you
practice?
practicing the other
Oh,
side?
okay. Um, so for me, I think there's twofold, and this isn't what I'm practicing, but it's what I want to do. First of all, I want to find a more healthy way to express my emotions. I think I'm really good at identifying what the emotion is and feeling it, but I want to feel it in a more healthy way because I do think that as an emotional person, I do have to let it out. Like I do have to express it, whether that be crying, whether that's like me like honestly it sounds kind of crazy, but sometimes if I just like get it out like even if I'm just like yelling, right, just like getting it out of my system, like I do feel better after. But obviously like you don't want to yell at another person, like that's not healthy either. So I kind of want to find more healthy ways to let that emotion come out of me because I do think it like I don't want to bottle that up either. So like I love running. I've always found that very therapeutic. But maybe something I need a little bit more physical, maybe kickboxing, like I don't know, something
Mhm.
to just like get that emotion out. So that's one part. But then to incorporate that more logical minded thinking, I really liked Aditi's advice of taking a step back. I really want to do that. And I also, this is, I think, me incorporating wise mind is to keep, and I'm literally saying this so like I remember to try to practice this. So this is kind of like me putting this on myself is is this authentic to Harini? Because I feel like if I do that, I will automatically start thinking in a more logical way. Because I know being explosive and being super emotive is not authentic to me. So I think I have to just keep asking myself that question when I'm in a conflict or in a situation. And yeah, what is authentic to me then?
Yeah, that's really sweet. I think so I have a couple things actually. I learned in therapy that like some people are verbal processors and some people are like internal processors. So like
Mhm.
you know how you're like I just need to get it out, like I just need to get it out. Like I think sometimes like just even having like a video diary, just get it out, like say it so it's
Wow.
out of your system. Because like I know we like there's journaling and then there's like you can always call a friend or a family member, but sometimes there's some things that you don't want to say to other people, or there's some things that you don't want to be influenced, right? So it's like I think I used to do this like 2, 3 years ago where I would just have a video diary, a video like journal, and I would talk for 6, 7 minutes and like it made no sense and I'd be crying and I'd be like babbling and not making any sense, but I just needed to get it out. Like
Mhm.
that exactly what you just said is like I think it like having it in my head made me feel like it was never gonna end.
Mm.
So that was something that really I really liked and something that really worked with me. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think for me, I need to not get scared of my emotions and I just need to let them pass. Like, and then I'm able to bring in a logical mind. And I think like right now, I need to be a bit more confident in my rational thinking because I think that's how my wise mind comes out when I know that I can like lean on what I think and what like I don't feel like I can really trust my emotions sometimes, so it's hard to lean on what I'm feeling, but when I'm able to be, like, clear-minded, I think leaning on that rational thinking really helps me bring my wise mind in, so just, like, feeling my feelings, taking a step back, and then letting the rational thoughts come in.
This is just like a question that I thought of while hearing you guys speak. I feel like because you're anxious, like there's I feel like we've all experienced gut feelings and then we've all experienced anxiety. I feel like I'm able to like distinguish like okay, this is my gut feeling, like I feel like this is like the universe communicating with me or whatever, and this is my anxiety. Do you guys, from like an emotional perspective though, I understand that might be hard, but I don't know. Do you feel like sometimes like those lines get mixed? Like do you feel like something is going to happen, um, but it's just your anxiety, but it's hard to distinguish that?
I think this actually comes into like the authenticity part. Like I think if I truly take a step back and I calm down and I think from a perspective of okay, what is authentic to Harini in this situation? My gut is usually like guiding me the right way. I mean, I don't want to say the right way, but to answer that is authentic to me. But my emotions can get so overpowering that I can't hear, like, I can't feel my gut at all. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's why, like, all the advice, and I love the video diary response to Aditi. Like, I think all of that is such practical advice that I need to take from this because you're right. Like, we do have to start having more confidence in ourselves that we do have the answers and we do know how to react in situations. And our gut is telling us the right thing to do. But we ourselves are overclouding it with all of our anxiety and fear and emotions and all of that. And like overthinking, like that's all coming into it. So I think taking a step back, really truly like processing and like maybe breath work can probably help with it too. Like my gut is usually giving me the solution and I'm just not listening to it at that time.
Mm.
I don't know, for me, I feel like I've only recently started to listen to my gut, actually. Um, I feel like I feel like when I met you guys, I started listening to my gut more.
Oh.
Aw.
Uh, but no, because I think for me, like when I feel safe in my body and when I feel like comfortable and like, I don't think for me it's just calmness. I think it's safety. When I feel safe is when I know that maybe my gut is pointing me to quote unquote correct path or like what I need at that moment, right? Like whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
That's when I feel like I can hear my gut more. Um, when I feel like there's like a voice in my head that's like shouting something at me, like, do I think that's my gut? No, not at all. Like, I think that when you're listening to your intuition or your gut or whatever you want to call it, like, it has to come from a grounded place. Like, it's not something that can uh just be heard in 30 seconds or in like uh a day or two, to be completely honest, right? Because like we're all a certain way, so you have to be aware of the way you even are first of all. Then you have to figure out the balance of that way and then be like, in that balance, is that gut saying the same thing? Is that like that part of that intuition still guiding me the same way. So I feel like it still takes me a little bit of work to be able to be like to get to that point, but that's what I look for. Like those are like kind of like the signs that I look for to see if I'm listening to my gut.
That makes sense.
Love that. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think we spent this whole episode kind of talking about the downfalls of being an emotional person and the downfalls of being like a logical thinker. But it would be really cool. And like, if we decide to do this episode again, like, what are the perks of being an emotional person and what are the perks of being a logical person? Because I think we have a lot of really cool superpowers too on the way that we think and how we express it and how we, communicate to the world and build relationships as well. So,
Yeah.
sometimes the grass is greener on the other side, but when I'm looking at it, I'm like, I'm actually really happy that I'm an emotional person too. Like there's a superpower in that as well. So I just want to celebrate that in all three of us.
It's so funny when you were saying, I was thinking this through the whole podcast. I was like, honestly, I'm so happy that I'm a rational mind.
We scared
You're like, I don't
Tika.
want to be in her and your Aditi's brain.
No, not from hearing you guys, but just like I was just like I feel like I just think through life. You guys are just like feeling it, and it is so hard. I'm happy that I think through life, you know?
That's
But
really
like obviously it's better to be both.
that
You're
is so funny.
so funny, bro. She really said, guys, stay safe out there.
Oh my God. All right. Well, with that, I think that's the perfect segue to wrap up this episode. Thank you all for listening and watching. And please, share your feedback. This was like a really cool topic for us. And it was really fun to share, but we'd love to hear your guys' perspectives and thoughts and, have some guest speakers come on to talk about this too. So thank you all for another episode.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.